And I'll turn it over to Julie Roth.
That is great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Here we are. That. Okay, you can see that okay?
Yes.
Back the slide. There we go. Okay, I'm Julie Roth. I'm the energy manager for the Office of Sustainability and Innovations for the City of Ann Arbor. And I am hosting the Ann Arbor Solar Story. Our speaker tonight is Michael Hagan. I will tell you more about Michael in a few minutes. The financial sponsors for my Solar Stories, Ann Arbor Solar Stories, are Eagle, Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes Energy, Homeland Solar, Harvest Solar, and Synergy. So thanks to the financial sponsors for allowing us to share solar stories. In case you're new here, these GLREA Zoom programs are on every Thursday night of the month. And when you sign up for GLREA Thursday night Zooms, you will find Ann Arbor Solar Stories the first Thursday of each month. And the second Thursday of each month is a clean energy seminar hosted by Mark Clevey. The third is Detroit Solar Stories, and the fourth could be anywhere from Michigan or an energy Q&A. So really good things going on Thursday evenings. All of the webinars are 1 hour, 7 to 8. So, and all of them are on Zoom. The GLREA is a 501c3 nonprofit. It was founded in 1991. It's supported by members to educate and advocate for renewable energy in the Great Lakes region. So this is part of education. We've also heard on Zooms and in newsletters all of the amazing advocacy work that the GLREA does in Lansing. I could go on and on. It's a valuable organization on both of these fronts. So you can become a member, you can sponsor somebody else's membership, or you could encourage other people to join, and certainly encourage them to come join these Thursday night meetings. So enough of that introduction. Now I'm going to introduce to you Michael Hagan, who is kind of a hero. Michael lives just outside of Ann Arbor, and he has not only gone on his own journey of decarbonizing his home. Beyond that, he didn't stop there. He shares. He's become an A20 ambassador. A20, of course, is Ann Arbor's plan for a just and equitable transition to carbon neutrality community-wide by 2030. And we have an ambassadors program where community members join an ambassadors cohort. I think we're on the 4th or 5th cohort now. We have almost 100 ambassadors trained. They go through months of educational work to learn all about A20 and all of our different programs, what's involved with getting to carbon neutrality community-wide, and then they engage in projects and ways to sort of be extensions of OSI to create change in the community. And part of what Michael has done, in addition to his own work and telling everybody who will listen in every format that he can, amazingly, about what he's done, he's also helped create the Green Energy Neighbors program, which formalizes that to some degree. They will come and bring tabling materials and come to events and basically neighbor to neighbor talk to people about what they've done, and the various people who are sort of mentors in this group. So I'm going to stop talking now and hand it over to Michael, who is going to share about these things. So Michael, you can take it away.
So I do share screen. So can you see my slide?
Yes.
Great.
Okay. So I'm Michael Hagan, and as Julie said, I'm a ambassador for the 820 program. I'm a retired physician, retired hospital administrator, a transplant recipient, and now in retirement, I'm a climate activist. And my goal is to save planet Earth. Now let's see if this works. So I'm going to tell you the story of my 12-year journey to become net zero. So this is a picture of my house. It's from the front of the house, it looks exactly the same before and after my 12-year journey. And I have had questions about, well, is it going to affect that? And the answer is no. So the first thing you do that I did 12 years ago, I did an energy audit. I used Meadowlark Energy, who has transitioned to Meadowlark Construction. But Meadowlark came and did an energy audit. They sealed up the house, put this blower fan in the front door, created negative pressure in the house, and then used a thermal camera and went around all my doors and windows and all around the house looking for the leaks. So before you do even your solar panels or whatever you're going to do, it makes sense to make your house tight as possible so that you don't create heat and then just let it go out through the leaks. So the purpose of this is to find the leaks. And we found leaks. And so there was a plan to insulate around all my doors and windows, which I did. We put additional insulation in the attic. And in addition, we did insulation of the entire foundation of the house. So a team came in with hazmat suits, and we had to leave the house for 3 days. And they came in and put all this foam all around the entire foundation of the house. And in the end, I have what they call a very tight envelope. And that's where you want to be when you start doing all your energy saving ideas. So I also did all the relatively inexpensive things, like turning off the lights when I leave the room, getting all LED lights, turning electric appliances connected by power strips, all those kinds of things that are quick and easy and relatively inexpensive. That's the first step. It is to reduce the amount of energy that you use. So I did actually significantly, just doing nothing else, just reduced my energy use. So that really helps. So once you have a tight envelope, then you want to get fresh air into your house. And so the next step I did was to put in an energy recovery ventilator. So this device takes fresh air from outside and stale air from inside and runs them through these pipes side by side, and the energy transfers from one to the other. So the fresh air comes into my house already at the temperature of the house. So I spend no energy heating or cooling this air. So right now in winter, it's bringing cold air from the outside into this box. Stale air from heated stale air from the house goes into this box. They run side by side. And then the fresh air gets warmed up and comes into my house already warm. So it's really a very simple, ingenious idea on conserving energy. You use your energy to heat the air in your house, and you don't lose it when you bring in fresh air. So it's always good to have fresh air coming in all the time. The other thing I did was convert to all electric appliances. So the clothes dryer and the electric oven. Now, this was years ago. This was early in my journey. And now, there's induction stoves. I didn't know about induction stoves 12 years ago. So I'm considering replacing my electric stove with an induction stove. And same with the clothes dryer. That's an electric clothes dryer, but now they have heat pump clothes dryers, which is even better. So I think my 12-year journey is never going to end because there's always going to be something that's going to be there. but I did these. And then I also did an electric water heater. And now they also have heat pump water heaters too. I didn't know about that, but this is it's called a Marathon, and it's really great because it's super insulated. It's like a great big thermos, and there's like 6 inches of insulation around the whole thing. And then once you get the water heated, it pretty much stays at that temperature. So that's a very nice thing. And it's big, but it's very effective. So then there's solar panels. So I put on solar panels the month after DTE switched from net metering to distributed energy. But I put in a total of 27 solar panels. And one of the things that bothered me is that they put in this Harvest Energy, by the way, put in these panels. They got it all installed, and the Ann Arbor inspector came and inspected it. It was fine. And then I had to wait like 6 weeks before DTE would come to my house and turn the system on, which I don't think is fair. And as you guys were discussing earlier, I also have, let me show you, 2 storage batteries. These are Tesla Powerwall batteries. Each one of them holds 13.5, so together it's 27 kilowatts of energy that I can store. But excess energy, after the battery is filled, I give the excess energy back to DTE. And as was mentioned before, you know, when they store that for me, theoretically. And then in the wintertime, I need that energy, and then they give it back to me, and they pay me half of what I pay them. And I don't think that's fair. You know, I produce the most energy in the summertime. In the summer months, I'm giving DTE between 700 and 900 kilowatts a month. And then, like I said, they only pay me half. So if you look at it, I produce the most energy in the summer, and that's when the grid has the most stress on it with all the air conditioning. So I'm helping DTE by not using any grid power during that time. In addition, I'm giving DTE additional kilowatts so to help them over their peak period. So I think they should pay me double because I'm helping them double, not using their energy and then giving them energy. But I think that's a lost cause. And I don't like the fact that it's a monopoly and that there's not much we can do about it. In any case, that's my solar. I also have a Chevrolet Bolt. It's an electric battery car, and I put a charger in my garage. And I can tell you, I have not bought gasoline in the last 5 years. So that itself is a great savings. And I have not paid DTE energy. I have not paid for electricity to DTE in 3 or 4 years, but they do charge me a lot of fees. There's all kind of fees, and I still have to pay the fees. But for actual energy, I produce more solar electricity than I use. And for the past year, my house used 8,000 kilowatts in the year, and my solar panels produced 9,000 kilowatts. So I had all that excess energy. So I also got rid of my gas furnace and installed a heat pump. This is the most recent addition here. This is a cold climate air source heat pump. It's the newest technology, and it's the top of the line. And the heat pump alone will run down to 0 degrees without any assistance. After 0 degrees, there's a backup heat strip within the system, and that will turn on. But you know, it's good to 0, basically. So the on the left is the outdoor units, the compressors, and then on the right is the indoor air handler. In the heating strip is inside that air handler. So this is my picture of my house after my solar panels. So I have 27 of them. And also, I don't have an inverter. Each panel has its own inverter. And that was something new at the time, I think. But that's the 27 solar panels. My house is not ideally situated. This roof where the panels are is actually facing east. So I get strong morning sun, but not as much afternoon sun. It still produces, but not at a high rate. To the left there is a sunroom addition that I put on. And I put 3 solar panels on the roof of the addition, and that roof does face south. So I do have some south exposure and get some sunlight that way. So I assume that you all know about Ann Arbor's A20 plan, but this is a summary of it. But this is their plan to be carbon neutral by 2030. And they've got like a 75-page plan, step by step, all the things that they want to do in these different categories. So as an ambassador, we support all of these efforts. So I was in the 4th cohort. The 5th cohort is just now finishing, and they are actually signing up people for the 6th cohort. And that will put them over 100 ambassadors that they have. So as Julie mentioned, after you take your 12-week ambassador training, then you have to do a project. Well, I joined up with 4 other ambassadors, so we're a group of 5, and we created a thing called the Green Energy Neighbors. And it's a way of sharing our stories. But 2 of our 5 people were IT people. So we're creating an electronic system, a database, and collecting contact information for 2 groups of people. People like me who have done stuff, which we call mentors, and people that want to do stuff, which we call learners. And then this database connects the people, and then we contact them and we can share our stories. And our purpose is just to share our experiences. We are not professionals in any of these areas, but it's just to share our experience of what it was like working with this company and that company, et cetera. But it's been very good. And it's just getting started. We've been to several events. We were at the Scioto Township Energy Fair. We've been at the A20 Week and the Green Fair. And A20 Week this week is going to be June 10th through the 15th. And we are going to use my house as an open house. So we're going to advertise this, have people sign up, and they can come to my house and see all my projects. I will take them through my house and show them all my things. We will also have vendors set up in my driveway so that people can meet with the vendors. And it's going to be on Sunday, June 9th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. So that's where I will end. And I'm assuming that there's time for questions and answers, Q&A.
Absolutely. You want to stop sharing your screen? We can all kind of come back together.
Okay. Okay.
There we go. Thank you for that, Michael. I told you he was a rock star. So there are some questions in the chat that we can go to, and also people can feel free to raise their virtual hands or wave their actual hands. But before I forget, Michael, I have one question for you. Did you have, or have you had, DTE cut your gas line to your house yet?
Yes, when I last winter, when the winter ended, I knew I was going to put in the heat pump, so I disconnected. I had DTE disconnect my gas line because there was no use for it. So in that one picture I showed you with the insulation in the basement, you can see that pipe hanging down. That's my gas line that is no longer functioning.
That's great. So now you don't get any of the fees and any of the charges for having,
No.
gas
For
at all.
gas, no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, that's great.
But
Even when I had gas, even on the months when I didn't use any gas, they still charge you a fee
Mhm,
just for having an account. But I don't get that anymore.
sure. So
did
we'll
they
start with,
deinstall?
go ahead, Abraham.
Did they deinstall the meter?
No, I think the meter is still there. So I think their thinking was if I ever sell the house and the new people want gas, it's already there. But the meter is still there as far as I know.
They'd be crazy people after all the work you've done.
Did they disconnect it at the meter?
Yes.
Good deal. Okay, we'll go to Dave Curtis.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, where I live, consumers handles both electric and gas. And I wonder if you have DTE and consumers, or how does that work for you?
No, DTE is our provider and they do both electric and gas,
Hmm,
at least for me.
Yeah, several years ago, when Michigan Consolidated Gas was an independent utility, and a lot of people in Southeast Michigan had DTE for electric and Michigan Consolidated Gas for gas. But then DTE absorbed Michigan Consolidated Gas. So that's when DTE got in both types of businesses.
okay, thank you.
And John?
Yeah. Well, you said that you're interested even you're
John, you are breaking
Cutting
up
out.
quite a bit. Can everyone else hear him, or is he breaking up for everybody else?
I could not hear them.
Breaking up.
am I
No,
or not,
nope.
not okay?
We'll
Never
come
mind.
back to you, John. We'll come back to you, see if you can get your audio. If not, see if you can put your question in the chat. I'll make sure to read it out. Okay, cool. Mark?
I was looking in the chat and there's some very interesting discussion, but there are many acronyms. So I would like some helpful person to spell out what ASHP, HRV, ERV, and ECM are.
ASHP is air source heat pump. So technically there's two kinds of heat pump. Heat pumps that get their energy out of the air and heat pumps that get their energy out of the ground. And those are also referred to as geothermal. So mine is an air source, cold climate air source heat pump. What was their other one?
HRV,
I'm not sure what HRV, but
Heat
ERV,
recovery ventilator and energy recovery. Is that right?
they sound like the same thing.
No, there's a difference. ERV gets into thermodynamics a little bit. It's enthalpy recovery, and the HRV is heat recovery. The ERV has a membrane in it so that the latent heat, moisture, can permeate the membrane. So in Michael's case, he gets some additional heat recovery because he's recovering the latent heat. through the heat exchanger.
That's great. I understand these things, except I haven't heard the acronyms before. ECM was the last one.
That was Dale Klein who wrote ECM.
Yeah, I typed that in. An ECM motor is an electrically commutated motor as compared to typically like a blower motor in a furnace or in an ERV or HRV. There's fans in there to blow the air through. And an ECM motor is more efficient than a traditional PSC or permanent split capacitor motor. So if you care about exactly how much energy it takes to move the air around, an ECM motor is a bit more efficient.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I think you are not the only one who is probably wondering about the acronym. So thanks for asking the question so that people could clarify. I'm going to jump into some of the questions in the chat, Michael. What DTE rate structure do you use? Do you know the one point? I can't remember what the numbers are. There's the time of use that's now standard, and then there's a
Yes,
even tighter time of use. Yeah.
the bill that I get from DTE is very confusing, and I called them up, and they didn't help me much because they have capacity and non-capacity and on-peak and off-peak. So I do know that the peak between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. is peak hours. The rest of the hours are off-peak. So that I understand. But then they put this capacity and non-capacity. And they tried to tell me that capacity is the price for the electricity itself, and non-capacity is for everything else associated with it, which I don't understand.
Yeah, it's legitimately confusing. I'm going to drop something in the chat that we created at OSI that's sort of a bill explainer. And I don't, we might have to hear a little bit of it, but they're wild and confusing. They'll be to be done.
Yeah, this is John Freeman. About a year ago, Dale Klein put together a really nifty memo. It's about 12 pages, and he talks a lot about, and Dale obviously can speak for himself, but he talks a lot about the new time of use rates that are being offered by both DTE and consumers. And he makes strong suggestions on, if you have a solar panels on your roof, which new rate should you choose in order to maximize the benefits of your solar system. And we can send this memo to anybody that wants it for free. And then Dale is always available to be able to answer questions by email or even over the phone.
And I
Well,
just
I'd
put
like to
our
get
one-
that.
Yeah, and I just put our one feature in there, and we, I think with permission, looked at some of the GLREA, research that they had done as well. But in addition to just sort of explaining your bill, like what is this, what is that kind of thing. So you can open that link. It should be accessible to everybody.
I just put a link in the chat to the slides from that talk a while back. So you can read through that and feel free to contact me if you have more questions. But
Can I add, if there's a, I don't know, functionality that we can find out, even if you don't have solar panels, the best rate to be on?
Well,
yeah, it would kind of depend on your usage and whether you want to move some of your loads to off peak. If you can move some of your loads to off peak, and I'm talking specifically about DTE, does have two rates that offer a little bit lower off peak rates. So there's D1.2, which is 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. is when the peak rates are. So that means the other 16 hours of the day, you get a lower off peak rate. And that's the one that I'm on, and that's kind of reasonable and simple. And it's a good payback for solar because most of your outflow happens when the rate is higher. So you get a higher credit for your outflow. The other rate that I think Harvey is on is called D 1.8. And that one is a little more complicated. It has 3 different levels. And then it also has like super peak days where like maybe up to about 10 days a year, the on peak time, which is maybe from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m., it's really expensive. And then overnight is only 8 hours from like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. is a little bit less, even less than the other off peak, the other time of use rate. But then you have 2 other periods, morning and afternoon, that are a mid peak, which are sort of in between.
So
I'm gonna jump.
Dale is correct. I would say, given what Michael was complaining about, I'd suggest that he go take a look at D 1.8, which is also known as dynamic peak pricing. The on peak is between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. and you can effectively arbitrage your power. If you charge the battery during the night between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., you can charge it pretty inexpensively then, and charge your electric vehicles for that matter. Have your solar panels pump power out between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And I've had some similar conversations that Dale's talking about with DTE, and I come to find out in the whole DTE customer base, there are exactly 13 customers that are both distributive generation and dynamic peak pricing. And their IT department struggles to figure out how to implement it. And for a while, their errors were actually in my favor.
Julie?
I have a small
Yeah,
comment to that. I was on dynamic peak pricing in 1.8, and when I went to distributed generation, I went to they put me on 1.2. They said you cannot be on dynamic peak pricing at the same time.
Well, it was not easy reading everything, and I went through some of the whole same problems that Michael went through until DTE said everything's all set up. And it turns out they don't need to come out to your site. They can turn that on in the office with their meter. So that was a whole delaying technique that DTE was employing to keep you from being engaged.
Julie,
They
this is
tried that with
John.
me too.
Yeah.
Julie, this is John. There is a really important question by James Meyer on the chat that we need to talk about, because
Go
that
for
is,
it.
well, James, I don't see where you are, but you're saying that you have heard that you're only allowed to have a solar system that produces 90% of your current usage. That is not true. It used to be 100% of your historical use of the previous 12 months. But then the legislature passed a new law last November that's now taken effect as of February 27th. And now it's been bumped up to 110%. So if anybody wants to install a new solar system, you can figure out what you've historically used, and then you can add another 10% to that. The whole idea, of course, is that if you want to get an electric car like Michael did, then you can have a solar system that's going to produce more electricity than you've historically used, because now you'll be able to use it to power your electric car. So it's 110%. It's not 90%. So
Yeah,
Harvey,
it's interesting. Nobody ever gave me the hassle about that one, John.
okay.
Harvey P, you've got your hand up. There's 2 Harveys. How many meetings are you in where there's 2 Harveys?
Yeah, I know, it's rare. I don't hit my head.
Yeah, we gotta get together. So I saw that you're having an open house from 1 to 4 on the 9th of June, and there's gonna be vendors. I saw no address.
We haven't done the publicity yet. But eventually there's going to be a sign up sheet because we're going to have 15-minute increments and you'll sign up for a time slot. And once we do that, then they'll have my address on it.
So how will I see that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I don't know if you subscribe to, if you're in Ann Arbor, around Ann Arbor, we'll be sending it out with the 820 week kind of events, signups and advertisements. But once this particular open house is available, John, is there a way to send it to folks who are here? I'm not sure how to circulate it.
Sure. I mean, if Julie or Michael, when it's appropriate, sends me the flyer, then I can forward it to everybody that's on this call tonight and
Right.
anybody else that's interested.
Great.
Great, thank you.
And then I have another question. I'm actually meeting with an HVAC guy tomorrow. And it's a company that I'll probably hire with my new construction, addition, renovation. And they're talking about a Mitsubishi air source heat pump as a source, and also a complementary gas furnace that will work with that heat pump as opposed to a electric resistance strip, which you have in your air handler. And I keep hearing little bits and snatches about low temperature usage and all of that. And I'm not up to date on that. I don't know where I can get that efficiently. So I'm wondering if somebody could just talk about, like, is there a model number for a?
Sure. Harvey, I'll be happy to answer your question.
All right.
So, and I think Michael Hagan and I have the same brand. I have 3 Mitsubishi Train heat pumps. They're air-to-air heat pumps. There's Mitsubishi and Train have got this joint venture. They're very efficient. I have no gas in the house, and I went through January at -5 and had heat just fine. So I would strongly recommend you go to the Mitsubishi Train residential site. It's, Train is long-standing HVAC, largely commercial business in the US. Really high quality stuff. I have been exceptionally pleased. I will tell you though, at -5 degrees, it uses a little more power than it does at 45 degrees, to say the least.
Right.
Their efficiency is highly dependent on the outdoor ambient temperature. But I would suggest, based on my recent experience, I wouldn't recommend anybody bringing any gas into their house.
So
I agree with
I'd
that.
also like to, if I can just weigh in on that real quick too, because this is something that we're working a lot with. We're rolling out some programs that are for Ann Arbor residents to sort of sort out these exact questions. So there's a difference between what a cold climate heat pump can accomplish and what contractors are comfortable with. Contractors are very comfortable selling what they've always sold and what they know. They are very nervous about new things and getting calls back and things like that. That's number one. So contractor comfort is a barrier to full electrification for sure. There are also tiers of contractors in terms of levels of comfort, fully electrifying and fuel switching people. And we're working on helping people try to identify those. And we always recommend getting more than one estimates. And I can help you afterwards if you'd like to know some of the contractors that we tend to refer to. Number 2 or 3 or whatever number I'm on, Some of it also depends on how tight your envelope is. So Michael mentioned, he did all that efficiency work first. And someone had asked, I don't know, Michael, if you know what your blower door test was, what your air exchange rate was. It was tight enough, obviously, to have ventilation, mechanical ventilation. So it was nice and tight. If your house is that tight, you're gonna get really, really good, comfortable, efficient heat from a cold climate heat pump. If you live in a barn and you're trying to heat with only a cold climate heat pump, you're not gonna be happy. And that electric resistant strip is gonna kick on all the time and you're gonna be spending a fortune. And in that case, a backup gas furnace is what people would do. But that's nuanced, right? And it really depends on your own situation. There's also cost implications for both. With solar, it's kind of a moot point. If your solar is reducing your electricity costs, great. If you don't have solar and you're electrifying, unless you do deep efficiency work at the same time, your costs, even though a heat pump is so much more efficient than burning fossil gas to heat your house, it's still going to be somewhat more expensive because of the electricity rates that DTE charges, versus artificially low gas rates. So when you have solar, that mitigates that. It's the solution to that. I know that was a lot, but I don't know if that was helpful.
Can I add one aspect more? And that is beyond having a tight house, a well-insulated house. That's the other part. So if you have R values of 35 in your walls and 60 in your roof, then I have two Mitsubishi Hyperheats, and two are almost too much, depending also on the type of ventilation system you have. That is to say, you have to have good distribution throughout and good humidity control with it, because the hyperheats themselves are not sufficient for the dehumidification part.
Michael, there's a question in the chat. How large is your house? What is your square footage?
2,000 square feet.
Very good. There's so much going on in the chat. Robert Tinker, do you want to jump in and say what you said in the chat? Because also this is going to be recorded and not everyone can see the chat.
Sure. Can you turn that down, Charles? Can you hear me?
Yep.
So I'm an architect. I'm currently working with the Ann Arbor 2030 district, providing energy audits for commercial buildings. And I've been called upon to do lots of analyses of utility bills to determine exactly what the solar is doing for the property. So I have it's a complicated thing to look at those bills because I've seen lots of them and they're not all the same. But I have a spreadsheet that I use to take a year's worth of bills, and using the data on the bills, I can tell you how much you're actually paying per kilowatt hour for your power. And if you're interested in knowing what that is.
Which is a pretty cool offer.
Are you willing to share the spreadsheet?
Or your email?
Sorry, can you say that again, please?
I'm sorry, Robert, this is John Freeman. Are you willing to share your spreadsheet with other people?
Yeah, I can share it with you.
Great.
And I can help you get through it. You got to put in data from a whole year.
Maybe if you put your email in the or how you'd like to be contacted in the chat. And
Okay.
then people who are interested could reach out. Thank you for that offer. That's very generous. Hugely
You're welcome.
appreciated. Robert Tinker is another one of my heroes, along with Michael Hagan. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of heroes.
Yeah, and another thing I would like to mention is that if you have an all-electric home or a home that's heated with heat pumps, you can get on a special rate for your heat pumps. So it makes the cost a lot less.
It does require an additional meter, which they charge for, though, right?
Yeah, but it's only like $5 or $6 a month for the meter.
Oh, I thought it was like to install the new meter was thousand, no?
No, they don't charge you for installing that meter.
Huh,
Um,
might be another thing that is variable.
and
and
what
people
what
can
happens
choose.
is, yeah, what happens is during the winter time, during the winter months, your cost per kilowatt hour is about half of what is normal. And then during the summer months, it goes back. So your air conditioning, you won't save on your air conditioning, but you'll save on your heating with that rate.
It's really interesting, Bob, because I've had experience with people telling me that they were to be charged a lot of money to install that meter. So you're
Really?
seeing not, yeah. So that's, I mean, that's kind of a game changer too, actually. And
Yeah,
it may go back to DTE, that does whatever, it depends on who you talk to. I
Yeah.
don't know.
yeah, DTE is not our friend.
Yeah, yeah.
I was told the same for other heaters. One was for an EV, separate EV, I'm sorry, heater, EV meter.
Mhm.
And in the past also for getting the separate cooling systems under the dynamic pricing. You could actually get your cooling system on a separate meter, so that they could better manage that during critical times. But they would charge separately for that meter as well. And for geothermal, I think they also charge separately for the meter. So we may have to get real data somehow out of
Would be
DTE.
really good to have confirmation, since it seems like there's been variable experience with that, and it's
And-
important.
It depends probably on who you're asking and what they're trying to tell you the cost for. DTE charges for every extra meter something like, it's only like a couple dollars extra per month, but times 12 every month for any of those extra secondary meters, just to read the meter. You, as the homeowner, have to supply a box for them to plug the meter into on your house. And then that has to be powered from the top of your original meter. So you need an electrician to set that part up. And it's a box that by itself probably costs a couple $100 and somebody to install it. And then that has to go into your house to whatever you're going to power, like your heat pump or your water heater or whatever. So you, depending on if you're asking an installer, you get one price. And then there is the additional thing. The other thing I'm not sure anybody's mentioned is that your solar can only be on one of these, probably your main meter is where your solar belongs. You could probably try to put solar also on one of these other meters. Maybe DT would let you do that, but it gets complicated. One way around that, I've heard people explain, is you can have, and I have some of my things set up this way, you can have a transfer switch so that you could have your heat pump, and in the wintertime, you switch it over to your geothermal meter and run it that way. But then in the summer, when you have excess solar, you can run your heat pump for air conditioning. You just flip it over to run from your main system, and that's a fine way to do it. And it's not that expensive. It'd be another transfer switch, like have somebody install it, a couple $100 probably, but it's not, it's
Dale?
just
I know John Gourlay is having problems with his internet, but he says he installed a geothermal heat pump on its own meter and he was not charged to install the meter.
yeah. Well, I mean, DTE doesn't charge you to install the meter, no, but you have to have an electrician, or if you know how,
Okay.
you have to have this box that houses the meter, which by itself costs at least probably 150, $200 just for the meter can, you'd call it, and then conduit and other stuff like that. And I think John Gourlay, I think he's, like I was trying to describe there, I think he has a transfer switch. He can move his geothermal system to be run off of his, either he can select it in the house. You're not allowed to put other loads onto the geothermal meter or your water heater meter or your air conditioner meter. If you have those secondaries, those are supposed to be only for that particular appliance. But I don't think they can prevent you from choosing to run your air conditioner sometimes off of the 1 meter and then other times off of your main meter. I don't think they can prevent you from doing that.
There are two other questions I'd like to get to in the chat. Michael, one is, did you get your, what does it mean to have a net zero house? Have you been sort of certified, or are you sort of just charting how much you're producing versus how much you're using? What does net zero mean?
I track all my data, so I have a very large spreadsheet that I've kept for the last 3 years. And every month, actually every day, I record how much solar I produced, how much energy my house used, how much I pulled from the grid, and how much I gave to the grid. So I took all that, and then for a whole year, added up all the energy that was produced by solar and all the energy that I used from the grid, and my solar produced more energy than I pulled from the grid. So that is, it's actually net negative, but we call it net zero. But that's, I don't, it is what it is. I don't know if it's an official, there's no certification or anything, but it's just the fact that I produce more energy than I use. So over the course of the year, I actually use no electricity from DTE, because what I use in the winter is offset by what I gave them in the summer.
Michael, remind me, how many kilowatts, how big is your system? I know you said how many panels it is. Do you know how many kilowatts it is?
It's a 9.6 kilowatt system.
So you run a fully electric, very efficient home on 9.6 kilowatts of solar.
Yes.
Pretty impressive. Pretty efficient house.
But in reality, he uses the grid as a battery.
Yes.
Yes.
He also has batteries.
And then when he is, let's say, short, he in fact does get electricity from the grid.
Right.
And so making, well, you could.
He's not off grid.
He's not off grid, and therefore you produce, you have the other sources that continue to produce energy. So, for example, a coal plant, a nuclear plant, and a gas plant, etc. That's the utilities use.
So it's net zero because he is offsetting someone else's coal and gas use at a different time of the year. So that on balance, he's not responsible, essentially. He's not off grid. Off grid would mean that you're not tied into the big grid for backup at all. That's hard to do because of our winters. You need a lot of battery storage to be able to store all your own electricity and never use the grid as backup. For sure.
So how big is your battery, Michael?
It's 2 Tesla Powerwalls, 13.5 kilowatts each. So it's 27 kilowatts.
Those are a newer addition, aren't they, Michael?
I got them a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nope, not so newer. There was something in the chat I wanted to elevate. I'm losing track of the chat, but I think it was Janet who asked, okay, does anyone know if you got a solar array under the 90 or 100% rule and you want to add panels now that it's 110% of your usage, can you do that? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer.
My understanding is that if you add panels to whatever arrangement you've already made with DTE, I happen to come in before they cut back. So I have whatever you call that. I always forget all the terminology. What?
Net metering?
I can't, net metering, yeah. So I have net metering for a decade, but if I add a panel, I lose it.
As long,
Yeah, so if you came in after net metering and you're on the distributed generation, then that would be irrelevant.
but
Yeah, I'm gonna.
With distributed generation, you can, you know, for a long time, they had that capped. And they pulled that cap off to 150 kilowatts with distributed generation now. So it was a big change. You know, the installer and I were wringing our hands at making sure we were going to be underneath it. And then when they sent me the agreement, they said, oh, you can install panels up to 150.
But
It's still,
if you actually change those, the number of panels, they have no real way of knowing
Yeah.
whether you changed. And in fact,
Yeah.
you can plan for that.
You
Yeah,
would just,
I did.
Janet, have to make sure that your inverter capacity
Right.
is big enough to handle more solar. So
Yep.
you could talk to your installer about that. It could be pretty easy to just stick on a few more panels if you have the capacity in your inverter.
But I
You
don't have an
almost double
inverter.
them.
Oh, you
I don't have an
right,
inverter.
Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Each
so
panel
Michael,
has
you
its own
have the
inverter.
micro inverters, right?
Right.
In your panels, yeah.
Right,
And that makes it even easier.
right.
Because you just put on another panel and it's got its own little micro inverters, so you don't have to worry about that. Yep,
Right.
good point. John?
yeah, I just want to point out something in the chat. We are using artificial intelligence to summarize this conversation. It's a new tool that Phil Reed is using. So if you look under the chat, you'll see a full summary and it's HTTPS Otter. So if you all want to click on that, on your computer, you will see essentially a summary, almost like a dental, you know, one of those court reporter type deals on this entire conversation. So it's a way that this artificial intelligence piece of software is capturing this entire conversation. So if you click on it, you'll be able to review what we talked about tonight, and particularly Michael's presentation and all of these wonderful questions and answers.
That is pretty. Thank you for elevating that, John. And it is actually 7:59. And so to respect everybody's time, I'm going to call it. And especially, can everyone give an enormous thank you to Michael for taking the time out and sharing his amazing work with us and with everybody. He's tireless in his advocacy and his willingness to share. And Michael, we appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you next month.
Okay,
Bye, y'all.
bye. John, I'm not seeing the otter thing that you referred to. I can save chat. John Freeman?
One second, I'm trying to get
Sure,
the,
sure.
If you scroll your chat to the bottom, you'll see it. Or not to the bottom,